There's a reason some men walk into a room and instantly command attention without saying a single word. It's not their looks, not their money, not even their charm. It's their energy. It's the quiet confidence that tells the world, I don't need to prove myself. I know who I am, boss. And here is the shocking truth: younger women can feel that energy the moment it enters their space. They sense when a man has depth, when he's lived, when he's learned to lead without needing validation. It's magnetic, it's rare, and it's exactly what separates the men women forget from the ones they never get over. Most men think attraction is about impressing her, saying the right words, dressing the right way, playing the right game. But that's surface level energy, and women can spot it from a mile away. What truly captures a woman's mind, what makes her crave your presence long after you're gone, is leadership: real, grounded, emotionally intelligent leadership. The kind that doesn't demand respect but naturally earns it. This isn't about being older, it's about being wiser. It's about embodying a mindset that says, I lead myself first. Because when a man leads himself, everything around him follows: his relationships, his success, even his peace. So before you scroll away, understand this: the reason women talk about certain men for years isn't luck. It's alignment. It's the way he moves with purpose, speaks with conviction, and stays unshaken no matter what. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why women feel drawn to that kind of energy and how to become the man whose presence they can't stop thinking about. Keep watching, because what you're about to hear will change how you see yourself forever. You know what's fascinating? When you really listen to younger women talk about older men in private, the conversation shifts from surface level attraction to something much deeper, something that has nothing to do with status, looks, or money. It's emotional safety. It's the feeling of being around a man who doesn't demand energy but restores it. A man who doesn't need to be loud to be heard. A man whose presence feels like peace. That's what they mean when they say he's different. You see, emotional safety is one of the arrest experiences women talk about today. The world around them is full of men who are reactive, insecure, defensive, and constantly trying to prove their worth. Every argument becomes a competition. Every disagreement feels like a threat, and women are exhausted. They are emotionally drained from constantly needing to be the bigger person to regulate someone else's chaos while trying to hold their own life together. But then an older man enters the picture, and his energy feels different. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't over-explain. He listens not to reply, but to understand. And in that quiet exchange, something powerful happens. She relaxes. Her nervous system feels safe. It's not about control. It's about composure, because a woman can feel it instantly when a man is emotionally grounded. When he's not swayed by her emotions or triggered by her tone, she tests his energy subtly, instinctively. And when he doesn't crumble, she feels something most men never make her feel: trust. You see, trust isn't built from promises or pretty words. It's built from consistency and presence. And older men, through experience, learn that peace is more seductive than performance. They've lived long enough to realize that confidence isn't about being right. It's about being centered. When a man stops reacting and starts observing, he changes how women experience him, because she knows deep down that his peace wasn't handed to him. It was earned through pain, loss, and lessons. That calmness is the result of years spent rebuilding himself from what life destroyed. And when he speaks, that weight is felt. It's not about what he says, it's about the energy behind his words. Younger women crave that feeling, not because it's romantic, but because it's rare, it's grounding, it's stable in a world that glorifies chaos. When a man carries emotional safety, he doesn't need to chase attention. He attracts it naturally. People, not just women, gravitate toward calmness. It's magnetic because it's missing in so many places. Think about it. Every interaction today is reactive. People rush to prove, defend, attack, and justify. But the man who can sit in silence and not be uncomfortable with it, that man stands out. He creates space for a woman to drop her defenses, to stop performing, and to finally just be. And that's when she opens up. That's when she feels connected. Not because he said something perfect, but because his energy told her, "You're safe here." Say, and this is why younger women speak so highly of emotionally grounded older men behind closed doors. They admire the way he handles conflict. They notice how he doesn't match chaos with chaos. When she's emotional, he's patient. When she's distant, he doesn't panic. He gives her space without punishment. That's not weakness, it's leadership. Because emotional safety doesn't mean avoiding confrontation, it means guiding it with maturity. Many men don't realize that the modern dating world is emotionally overstimulated. Everyone's competing for attention, validation, and control. But the man who provides calm instead of conflict immediately becomes unforgettable because he's not just offering love or attraction, he's offering peace. And peace is the new luxury. It's what every woman secretly wants but doesn't know how to ask for. It's what she remembers long after you're gone. So when younger women whisper about older men, they're not talking about their cars or careers. They're talking about how those men made them feel safe, grounded, and seen. They're drawn to the energy of someone who has nothing to prove because it allows them to stop pretending too. That's what makes the connection so powerful. It's not two people performing, it's two souls resting. And here's the truth. Emotional safety isn't built by age alone. It's built by awareness. Any man can develop it if he's willing to face himself, his triggers, his ego, his need for validation, and master them. Because once a man becomes emotionally secure, he changes every room he walks into. He doesn't demand attention, it follows him. He doesn't chase love, he creates it. So if you really want to know what younger women are saying behind closed doors, it's this: he made me feel safe in a world where no one does. That's not just attraction, it's reverence. And once a woman feels that with you, she never forgets it. Remember this: anyone can be exciting for a moment, but only a man who gives peace can be unforgettable. When younger women talk about older men in private, what surprises most people isn't what they say, it's how they say it. There's a tone of fascination, almost a kind of respect. It's not just attraction, it's admiration. They talk about the way an older man walks into a room and doesn't need to announce himself. The way his silence carries more authority than another man's loudness. The way his stillness feels like strength, not weakness. That's what they notice, and that's what they can't stop thinking about. You see, presence is one of the rarest energies left in modern relationships. Most people aren't of a present anymore. They're distracted, disconnected, or performative. They're either trying to impress, compete, or defend themselves. But an older man who's lived, who's failed, who's learned how to sit with his own thoughts, that man carries a stillness that demands respect without ever asking for it. He's not performing for anyone. He's comfortable in silence, and that silence speaks louder than words. Younger women pick up on that energy instantly. It's not something you can fake. You can't imitate presence. You can't copy calmness. It's something that comes from experience, from facing the storm and not running away from it. It's the kind of quiet that's born out of chaos. A man who's fought battles no one saw and learned that peace is power. When he's around, a woman feels something she rarely feels: stability. She doesn't have to guess who he is because his energy already tells her he knows himself. You see, women are not only drawn to strength, they're drawn to emotional certainty. They can sense when a man's energy is scattered or desperate. But when they encounter a man whose energy is contained, grounded, and measured, it intrigues them. He's not unpredictable. He's not impulsive. He has control over himself. And that control is magnetic because it signals something that's vanishing in the modern world: masculine composure. That's why younger women say things like, "he doesn't rush," or "he listens differently." What they're describing isn't slowness, it's awareness. The older man is deliberate. He pauses before responding. He takes time to think, and in that pause, there's power. Because most men react, they don't respond. They let their emotions lead. But an older man who's been through life's chaos learns that reacting is easy, staying composed is mastery. Younger women respect that kind of restraint because it's so unfamiliar. They live in a generation of overstimulation, constant texts, endless notifications, emotional noise everywhere. But when they meet someone who doesn't add to the noise, who brings peace instead of pressure, it shocks them. They're not used to being around someone who doesn't try to impress them, who doesn't seek validation, who simply exists with quiet confidence. That stillness feels safe. It feels mature. It feels masculine in a way that's almost spiritual. That's the secret few talk about. True masculine energy isn't loud. It's calm. It's not controlling. It's centered. A man's stillness creates space for a woman to relax into her femininity. When he's calm, she doesn't need to defend herself. When he's patient, she doesn't feel rushed. When he's grounded, she feels grounded too. That's why women admire older men, not for their age, but for their energy. And here's what's profound about it. Stillness isn't the absence of power. It's the control of it. Anyone can raise their voice. Anyone can dominate a conversation. But to hold your energy, to remain unshaken in a world that constantly demands a reaction, that's power. And when a man embodies that, his very presence changes how others feel around him. He becomes someone people want to be near, not because of what he does, but because of who he is. Younger women sense that. They see the difference between men who seek validation and men who've transcended it. The older man doesn't compete because he's already proven himself to himself. He doesn't chase admiration because he's already earned his own respect. That energy makes him stand out effortlessly. And the irony is, he's not even trying. That's what makes him unforgettable. When women talk about him later, they say things like, "There's something about him I can't explain." What they're feeling is the power of presence. That stillness isn't empty. It's full of history, lessons, scars, and wisdom. It's the quiet confidence of someone who's no longer ruled by his ego, someone who's learned that real authority doesn't need to shout. And this is the message to every man listening right now. Cultivate that stillness. Don't chase validation through noise. Don't try to prove yourself through performance. Learn to sit in silence. Learn to be comfortable, not reacting. Because the man who can hold his own peace becomes the anchor in every storm. He doesn't chase energy, he stabilizes it. He doesn't seek control, he embodies it. And that's why younger women speak of older men with such reverence, not because they're older, but because they've mastered themselves. They've turned silence into strength. They've turned composure into magnetism. And in a world where everyone's trying to be noticed, they're the ones who are impossible to forget. Because the man who owns his silence never needs to prove his power, it speaks for him. There's a very distinct difference between a man who chases and a man who chooses, and that difference defines everything about how women experience him. Younger women notice it immediately. They can sense when a man is led by impulse versus when he's led by intention. And this is where older men stand out so clearly. They've learned that self-control isn't about suppression, it's about direction. It's about knowing where your energy goes and choosing not to waste it on what doesn't grow you. That's the kind of power that can't be faked. You see, when a man is young, his emotions rule him. He reacts fast, speaks faster, and regrets even faster. His need for validation makes him chase attention, affection, approval, anything that momentarily quiets his insecurity. But over time, life humbles you. Pain teaches you what's worth your energy. Loss teaches you what's sacred. And that's when a man evolves. He starts realizing that not every woman deserves access to his mind, his time, or his peace. That awareness transforms his entire energy. Younger women pick up on this transformation. They feel the difference between a man who's desperate to be chosen and a man who chooses carefully. The first one floods her with attention but drains her emotionally. The second one takes his time, moves with calm certainty, and makes her feel safe without saying a word. His restraint is alluring because it signals mastery. Mastery over his impulses, over his desires, over his emotions. And that mastery communicates something primal. This man has control over himself. Therefore, he can lead, protect, and be trusted. That's why self-control is the ultimate masculine energy. It's not about denying attraction or emotion, it's about mastering it. Because the truth is, the world rewards control. The man who can regulate his emotions can handle any environment, any conflict, any woman, any storm. The man who can't destroys everything he touches. Women are biologically wired to sense that difference. They feel it in conversation, in tension, in silence. When a man loses his composure at the first sign of difficulty, she instantly sees him as emotionally unsafe. But when he holds his ground with quiet confidence, she sees something far rarer, a man who's not ruled by the moment. That's what makes self-control so magnetic. It's not flashy, it doesn't scream for attention, it's subtle but undeniable. When a man has it, he doesn't need to prove his dominance. His discipline is his dominance in the way he speaks, the way he reacts, the way he carries himself. He becomes intentional with his words, his touch, his time. Nothing about him feels scattered or rushed, and that consistency builds something far deeper than attraction. It builds respect. Younger women admire that because emotional maturity is becoming extinct. Most men today confuse freedom with indulgence. They think doing whatever they feel is power. But real power is choosing what not to do, resisting what's easy, saying no to what weakens you, because that's the discipline that builds trust, and trust is the foundation of desire. A woman can only surrender emotionally or physically when she feels safe. And she feels safest with a man who controls himself. What's fascinating is that this level of self-control doesn't make a man cold. It makes him magnetic. He doesn't chase validation because he validates himself. He doesn't beg for attention because he commands it without words. That's the difference between chasing and attracting. When your energy is steady, when your emotions are in alignment, you create gravitational pull. People, especially women, feel it without even knowing why. And this is where older men hold a quiet advantage. They've seen what happens when you let your emotions rule you. They've lived through consequences, heartbreaks, and failures that taught them that being reactive is a weakness, not a strength. So now they don't chase high emotions. They choose calm clarity. They don't text out of insecurity. They respond with intention. They don't argue to win. They communicate to understand, and that emotional discipline instantly separates them from the rest. Younger women talk about this behind closed doors with a tone that's half admiration, half surprise. They'll say things like, "He doesn't get jealous easily," or "He never loses his cool." What they're really saying is, "He's in control." And that control makes them feel both safe and intrigued because it's so rare to meet a man who isn't a prisoner of his own emotions. The truth is, the man who controls himself controls his reality because emotions are energy. And when you master that energy, you stop being tossed around by life. You become grounded, stable, unshakable. That's what women respond to. That's what inspires respect. Because if you can't lead yourself, you'll never be able to lead anyone else. So, if you want to know why younger women talk about older men the way they do, it's not just attraction, it's admiration. They're drawn to the man who doesn't let the world pull him in every direction. The man who doesn't beg for attention, doesn't react to disrespect, doesn't lose himself trying to be liked. He knows who he is, and that's enough. And maybe that's the real secret. The most powerful man isn't the one who gets everything he wants. It's the one who can walk away from what doesn't deserve him. Because in a world full of men chasing validation, the one who masters self-control becomes unforgettable. As there's something women say quietly when they describe men who stand out from the rest. They say he's stable, not flashy, not perfect, not larger than life, just stable. And that word, though simple, carries enormous power. Because in a world full of emotional turbulence, that one trait, stability, is what women find the most magnetic. It's not about dominance or control, it's about peace. It's about being around a man whose emotions don't depend on circumstances, who doesn't fall apart when things don't go his way, and who doesn't drag everyone around him into his internal chaos. That's real strength. Emotional stability is not talked about enough, yet it's what women crave the most. Think about it. Most people today are emotionally reactive. One wrong word, one disagreement, and they explode or withdraw. They let their emotions hijack their logic, and relationships turn into emotional battlegrounds instead of safe spaces. But when a woman meets a man who remains calm even when she's emotional, who doesn't mirror her chaos but contains it, she feels something she can't explain. Her body relaxes, her guard drops because instinctively she knows she's safe. Older men often have this quality naturally because they've lived through enough storms to realize that losing control never solves anything. They've been through heartbreak, failure, rejection, and they've learned how to process pain instead of projecting it. They don't react to every feeling that surfaces, they observe it, they understand it. That awareness creates emotional balance, and that balance is exactly what modern relationships are starving for. You see, emotional stability isn't about being emotionless. It's about having emotional intelligence. It's being able to feel deeply without being ruled by what you feel. It's knowing how to communicate anger without cruelty, disappointment without distance, love without possession. When a man reaches that level of awareness, he becomes emotionally trustworthy. Women can feel it immediately. It's in his tone, his timing, his reactions. He doesn't take things personally. He doesn't need to win every argument. He's not quick to assume, accuse, or escape. He listens. He leads with understanding, not ego. That's why younger women often describe older men as emotionally mature. It's not that they're perfect, it's that they've learned how to stay composed in chaos. They've learned how to hold emotional space for others without drowning in it themselves. And that's something few younger men know how to do. Not because they're incapable, but because they haven't yet faced enough of life to learn emotional restraint. That calmness, that grounded energy feels rare and comforting. It's not that he never feels anger or pain. It's that he's not controlled by them anymore. The irony is, emotional stability often looks boring to those who've been conditioned by chaos. Some people mistake peace for lack of passion because they've only ever known intensity that hurts. But peace isn't the absence of passion, it's the maturity to sustain it without destruction. A woman who's been through toxic dynamics will immediately recognize the difference when she meets a man who's steady. She'll notice how her nervous system reacts differently around him, how she doesn't need to walk on eggshells or constantly defend herself. That's the power of stability. It creates emotional freedom. And this kind of man doesn't gain that calmness overnight. It's built through discipline, through self-awareness, through the willingness to confront your emotions instead of dumping them on others. Every man who aspires to be strong must understand that true strength isn't physical. It's psychological. It's how well you control your reactions when things don't go your way, because the man who can't manage his emotions will always destroy his potential. Relationships, careers, opportunities, all because he couldn't master himself. When younger women speak about older men behind closed doors, they often describe them as so composed, so sure of themselves, or so grounded. What they're noticing isn't arrogance, it's centeredness. A man who knows who he is doesn't get thrown off by temporary emotion. He doesn't need to argue to prove his point. He doesn't shut down to avoid conflict. He stays present even when things get uncomfortable. And that consistency is deeply attractive because it represents safety. Women don't fall in love with perfection. They fall in love with security, the emotional kind. And emotional stability is the foundation of that. A man who stays calm when things fall apart, who can comfort without losing himself, who can guide without dominating. He's the man she trusts with her heart because his strength gives her permission to be soft. If you want to become that kind of man, don't chase validation or attention, chase mastery over your emotions. Learn how to respond instead of react. Learn to listen before you defend. Learn to hold yourself accountable when you're wrong, because emotional stability doesn't make you passive. It makes you powerful, the kind of power that doesn't need to shout to be felt. And when you reach that point, when your peace is unshakable, when your emotions are steady regardless of circumstance, you become something incredibly rare. A man who leads not by fear or force, but by presence. That's the energy that draws people in without effort. That's the strength that builds unbreakable relationships. Because in the end, the strongest man isn't the one who controls others. It's the one who has learned to control himself. S. When younger women talk about older men in private, what they often circle back to isn't just attraction, it's admiration. They say things like, or he knows what he's doing, or he's got direction. What they're describing is leadership. Not the kind that dominates or controls, but the kind that moves with purpose, quiet authority, and emotional awareness. And that's where the deepest difference lies between boys and men. Older men don't compete for validation, they lead through clarity, they don't try to prove they're in charge, they simply are because they know where they're going and why. In every relationship, someone leads the energy. It's not about power.